Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Emory Douglas Black History Month lecture presented by Tarrant County College's Connect campus, Department of Social Sciences. My name is Anthony Squires, and I'm an associate professor of government here at Tarrant County College's Connect campus, Fort Worth, Texas. I'll be your host this afternoon or evening if you're joining us from the UK. Before we begin, I'd like to start by thanking Dr. Morales, our president, and Dean Sullivan for their support of faculty efforts at student enrichment and community engagement, including programs like these. I'd also like to thank my colleagues, Misty Wilson-Mertens, Leah Tarwater, and Cedric Heights for their help with making this event a reality. I'd also like to do one quick announcement. If you're attending this event for your or a friend's extra credit, I'll be posting a link in the comments at the end of the talk to a survey. In order to get extra credit, you must fill out the survey. So once again, if you're looking for extra credit, make sure to fill out the survey that you'll find in the comments at the end of the talk. Finally, if you're interested in talks like this and like to see more events, remember to subscribe to the channel. Emory Douglas, who this lecture is named after, is an artist whose work brilliantly represents the social and economic lives of African Americans in an insightful and penetrating way. And while his work exposes the harsh and unjust conditions confronted by African Americans in the United States, it nevertheless is characterized by a powerful and inspiring message of liberation. The aspiration behind this lecture series is to use Black History Month as a vehicle for reflection and prospection, calling to mind Douglas's focus on socioeconomic understanding and his liberating potential. I doubt there's another activist or scholar in the UK who mirrors the goals of this lecture better than our guest today. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce this year's Emory Douglas Black History Month speaker, Dr. Kahan De Andrews. Dr. Andrews is a scholar, activist, and public intellectual. He holds a PhD in sociology and cultural studies from the University of Birmingham. Currently, he is a professor of Black Studies at Birmingham City University, which made him the UK's first professor of Black Studies. He is also the director of the Center for Critical Social Research, founder of the Organization of Black Unity Mitford, as well as co-chair of the Black Studies Association. He frequently appears in national and international media, including on the BBC and in The Guardian. And he's the author of two books, Resisting Racism, Race, Inequality, and the Black Supplementary School Movement, and the one he'll be discussing with us, Back to Black, Retelling Black Radicalism for the 21st Century. If you have questions for Dr. Andrews, you can type them in the comments at any time, and at the end, we'll try to get to as many as we can. Dr. Andrews is also joining us by live audience in the UK, and we'll take some questions from that live audience as well. Welcome to you, Dr. Andrews.
Thank you. All right, so I've got to do two things. So I'm just going to say thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you to the people who are here. I'm just going to turn off the screen in the UK. So I think that is better. I'm also going to talk into this microphone if it comes on, which obviously it's not going to. Here we go. Yes, all right. So for the benefit of people in the UK, I'm talking into a microphone. Welcome to the online audience. And honestly, this is the first time I have done something like this. When I was invited to do the talk, it was at first like, oh, you can do it in your office. And that just felt really strange, which is why I basically invited people to come. I would turn the camera around so you could see the audience, but technically it's not possible. So actually, could you just make some noise in the UK so people can hear you? All right, thank you. All right, thank you. All right, so yeah, I'm just gonna talk. I was gonna have a couple of pictures, but I figured it was better to not risk it because technically we've had a lot of problems. I'm sure you have hopefully seen Emory Douglas's work. Yes, hopefully. I mean, Emory Douglas was the primary drawer artist for the Black Panther Party. And I'm going to start off by talking about that legacy. And that legacy is really important of the Panther Party. The legacy also of arts within Black social movements and particularly Black radical movements is very important as well. And if you think about some of the ways in which art is important, you know, it's a really good way to transmit the messages that are in the politics, right? You all, I think, everybody listening online and here will be familiar with the idea of the pigs, right? The pigs as the police, but actually that's popularized by who? The Black Panther Party. By who is specifically? It's the drawings of Emory Douglas. And if I could show you a picture, I would show you one of the many cartoons which had the pigs, the police, in this way, and it's something that we still keep, right? We still know, we still understand. So the art is a really good way to promote those messages. And if you look at the images of Emory Douglas in the Black Panther newspaper, you'll see very clearly it's like these aren't just drawings, right? These are drawings which represent the politics of the time, which represent the politics of the people, and really were used to put out the messages out there. One of the things you will notice as I'm talking is that we have to be careful the extent to which they have to be careful sometimes with how we use culture, because culture can be misused as well, right? And there's a quote from that I always use in relation to culture, which is, culture is crucial to revolution, but it is not revolution. And that's really important. So the politics of Emory Douglas is the politics of the Black Panther Party. And without the politics of the Black Panther Party, Emory Douglas is just drawing cartoons, right? And that's really important, because I think we're in a moment where we are substituting culture for politics. Without politics, there's no culture. And even if you go back and look at some of the big cultural movements, the Harlem Renaissance, for example, was sparked by the new Negro movement of intellectuals that included the Harlem intellectuals, also included the Garvey movement, really important to the Harlem Renaissance, right? The idea that you would reclaim blackness and have this kind of art, right? That doesn't just come out of the art, that comes out of politics, which is then put into the art. And it's the same with the Black Arts movement in the US, the Black Arts movement in the UK, in the Caribbean, in Africa. It comes out of the politics of the time. And the politics of this time, Emory Douglas's time, was some of the most radical politics, Black politics that we've seen. So without those politics, you just got art. And art by itself without politics is not enough. And I think, honestly, if I was to reflect on where we are today, we're in a space where we have art, we don't necessarily have the politics. I wasn't going to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. Why not? So one of the examples in the book that I used and was criticized for, because I used it in the papers before, is Beyonce, right? We all watched, maybe we didn't all watch. I actually did watch Beyonce at the Super Bowl live. I was watching the game. I watched it, saw the performance, really thought nothing of this performance at all. It's just Beyonce doing Beyonce. It's what you would expect from Beyonce. I carried on, went to sleep, woke up, and then for the next 3-4 days, all I heard on the timeline, speaking to people, was how revolutionary a moment this was. How proud Black people should be that Beyonce danced around in a quasi pseudo Black Panther uniform, and apparently made an X with the dancers in this, which I totally missed. I completely missed that. And I don't know how everybody else felt about this, but as I was writing, was I writing the book? I was writing the book, Back to Black, Retelling Black Radicalism for the 21st Century. And it just reminded me of a quote from Malcolm X, who, this may be the longest I've spoken publicly without mentioning Malcolm X. So, we made a record potentially. So Malcolm X, before he died, had a quote where he said, "This word revolutionary is being misused," right? And this word radical is misused all of the time. And when you think about the politics of what's the politics of the art form, that's really important. So the politics of Emory Douglas and the Black Panthers and much of the Black Arts movement is a revolutionary politics. Politics of Beyonce at the Super Bowl is the politics of the Super Bowl, right? I mean, that is the #1 commercial slot in the whole entire calendar of the entire year. People pay millions to advertise for 30 seconds within the Super Bowl, right? That Super Bowl halftime show is capitalism at its very finest, or maybe not its finest, but certainly its biggest, right? The idea that this could possibly represent the Black Panther Party, would we know the Black Panther Party are a Marxist organization, or an anti-capitalist organization, that this could represent the politics of the Black Panther Party is frankly madness. I mean, we lost our minds over that. And it does speak to the way in which politics can be co-opted through art, right? So when people were praising Beyonce, I was actually thinking more about people like Nina Simone, right? So Nina Simone has political music, makes political music, doesn't just make political music occasionally. The music's kind of always political and risks a lot. I mean, Nina Simone's song, have you ever heard the song Mississippi Goddamn? It was all about lynching in the South, and it's like a really like a raucous song. That she got death threats for that, right? She actually risked her life, and the reason she left the country, America, one of the main reasons was because she was in fear of her life, right? I mean, she had something on the line. When Beyonce performed at the Super Bowl, this was choreographed, it was accepted, she got paid lots and lots and lots of money for it. There was nothing on the line, right? There's a very, 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 very big difference between those two acts, right? And I think that's really important when we're thinking about art and politics. Now, the other thing which I had a problem with the performance itself rather than the reaction. So actually, mostly I was mad at you or us or the people for the reaction to Beyonce and not Beyonce itself, because it's Beyonce. Like I said, I watched it, no reaction. Beyonce is Beyonce, what do you expect? And then we all got crazy about it because we've been so devoid of any radical politics. So my reaction was more a response to the reaction rather than it was to Beyonce. But there is actually one area of this which is problematic in terms of how that was put together. And that really is the issue of gender. Now, the Black Panther Party had many, 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 many issues with gender, right? It was one of the things that destroyed the Black Panther Party was this kind of hyper masculine way of doing things. They recruited the bad niggas from the block, as they called them, right? It was like, hyper masculine. And in that, there were many problems with sexual violence in the Black Panther Party, with the role of women in the Black Panther Party. Even if you look at some of Emory Douglas's work, some of it's actually really counter the stereotype. There's oftentimes women with guns, women defending, women are getting the police too. But also you can see the undertones of what the woman's got the kid, the woman's kind of defending the house, right? You can kind of see those undertones as well, right? So the Panther Party has problems with it. Now, Beyonce's representation of the Black Panther Party women, do anybody remember what was she wearing? So Black Panther Party women had a uniform, same way the Black Panther Party men had a uniform. It involved trousers, it involved a turtleneck, there's a shirt, there was a jacket. This is not what Beyonce rolled up in the halftime show at the Super Bowl, right? She didn't dress like a Black Panther woman. She dressed like a Hollywood version of a Black Panther woman, right? Fishnet stockings. The dancers had garters on. This is the hypersexualized female version of the hypersexualized man, which we have come to associate with the Black Panther Party. Now, there was nothing new about this image either. This is the image that we've seen popularized throughout Hollywood. In the 70s, there was blaxploitation. You think about Foxy Brown, Pam Grier, anybody old enough to know what I'm talking about? If not, Google afterwards, right? But there's a particular image of Black Panther women, sassy, sexy, hypersexual, the vixen, what Patricia Hill Collins calls the vixen, right? That's a particular way to disempower the women in the movement, right? If Beyonce turned up and said, look, I'm dressing like a Black Panther woman with the uniform, I'd go, wow, that's really different. But the fact that I'm sure I can't imagine it, I don't think you can imagine it, and that would never have been allowed to happen, tells you the problem about that representation, right? What we have is a stereotypical representation of Black women, a stereotypical representation of the Panther Party as well on the national stage. And again, I'm really mad because we fell for it as though this was some kind of revolutionary act, which it was not. Anyway, because I wasn't even going to say that. I went on to it. So why it's important though is because we are at the stage where Black politics is coming back in many ways. Like it kind of died down a little bit, and now Black Lives Matter. I mean, there's always been movements. There's been movements in the UK consistently, but there's kind of a bigger push for Black movements today. And the question we have to ask ourselves is, where are we going, right? What are we trying to do? What are we basing these things on? And if we base it on the wrong thing, we're going to be in trouble, right? And this is the issue, I think, with culture. What is the representation we're looking at, and what does that mean? More importantly, though, what is the role of culture within these movements? Now, the Black Panther Party is, I would say, one of the best examples of a Black radical organization. I won't go into it. It's one of the best examples in many ways. I mean, I'll be brief on this because I want to get into the culture thing. But what I've tried to do over the last year or so with the book is to say, like, what is Black radical politics? Because this, for me, is the most misrepresented political ideology probably that exists, right? When we think of Black radicalism, we think of the bad niggas off the block, people with guns, arms, violence, right? When we think of Malcolm X, my favorite, absolute favorite, mention him again, right? It's not going to be the last time, I promise. Absolutely, what do you think? Like Malcolm's representation is of this anti-white demagogue goes around just cussing people, right? Which was true. Let's not pretend, but there's much more to it, right? And so we have this really stereotypical image of what Black radical politics is. Thinking about culture again, did any of you enjoy the film Black Panther? Right? Oh God, I hate that movie. Jeez, it was. I mean, Black Panther was entertaining, right? But like gangster rap's entertaining, it doesn't mean it's good for you. And these are things you have to really think. Yeah, I enjoyed it, but when you actually look at what are the messages from that film, geez, they couldn't be any further from the Black Panther Party than they were in many ways. I'm not going to go into the whole analysis of this. I have written a piece on it for Organization of Black Unity. So if you go to blackunity.org.uk, you can see my full in whole analysis of the movie. But the important thing about them, the ties into what we're doing here, is the representation of Black radicalism in that movie is that stereotypical representation that we see all the time, right? Killmonger, right? Killmonger. Now you all know Killmonger was right? Like basically right. Analysis-wise, got it spot on. This is madness. Don't make no sense, right? Weird. But how is he represented? He's represented as, yeah, maybe he's got a point, but he takes it too far, right? He's far too violent. This is hyper masculine, crazy. You want to burn down the world, etc., etc., etc. And that is the exact mold in which Malcolm, the Panthers, Black radicalism is given to us, right? And maybe it's a good idea, but people get carried away. It's too much, too violent, etc., etc., etc. It can't work. Yeah? And we're always given that because it can't work and because it's too violent, because it's too male, we should do something else. And the something else tends to be what we are currently doing, which is making everything worse and worse and worse. And this is, again, thinking about culture. These images that come through in culture are really important because this is what these films and these ideas are teaching you, right? To turn you away from the actual truth here. And so when I say the Black Panther Party is one of the perfect models of this, it's because it has the politics down, 100% down. I mean, what's the politics of Black radicalism? It has two aspects. One is the analysis, two is the solution. The analysis is very simple, right? Racism is the system. There is no system without racism. Like, it's not possible. Like, to quote Malcolm, second Malcolm quote, I'll try not to do too many more. This is 64 before he dies. He says, this system can no more provide freedom, justice, and equality for Black people in America than a chicken can lay a duck egg. Right? It's just not meant to do it. Why do you keep expecting the system to do the thing that's never done? Right? I've kind of made a living off writing about racism in the papers, right? But I'm not surprised. Like when I see the statistics, that what was the other day? So in the UK, half of all young offenders who were locked up in young offenders institutions are ethnic minority. Half, like 1 in 2, right? There just was a report the other day that Black Caribbean young people in particular, twice as likely to be diagnosed with what they call social and emotional needs. Now, this is not because they're looking after us. This is so they can take us off the books and dumb down the education. And this has been happening in the UK since there have been Black children in this country. There has bin this approach, right? And why I say this is because I can go through the stats, unemployment, and for the American audience, it's basically the same in the UK as it is in America. The only difference is America is just more extreme, right? Like America's like Britain on steroids. Like Britain with no, like, you just took the West, take the West, take Europe, put it in a land where there's no, you can just do whatever you like. That's America, which is why you can see the racism so clearly, like so clearly. So like, for example, the statistics on incarceration. I mean, and when you actually look at American statistics on incarceration, they are, it's almost unbelievable, right? If you're an African-American boy born today, you have, and you don't have a high school degree, you have a 1 in 5, 1 in 4 chance of going to prison. You graduate college, it's like a 30%, you've still got a 30% chance of going to prison with a degree. I mean, that's mad, all right? The number of black people in prison is in America is amazing, is stunningly high. But in the UK, we're actually more overrepresented in the prison population per our numbers in the population. There's very few of us here, and African Americans are in American prison. Now the difference is that Britain does not incarcerate anywhere near the amount of people, so in raw numbers terms, it's not as bad. But the same things are happening there as they are happening here, right? In Britain, it's very unlikely that you are going to be shot dead while you are sleeping in your car if you're black, but you're far more likely to be detained by the police and choked by the police and die in police custody. Far more likely, right? So the basic analysis of black radicalism is these things aren't going to go away. This is what the system is. This is how it is always going to be. Anytime you're trying to have reform it or to have get access to it, all you are doing is just prolonging your misery because this system can no more provide freedom, justice, and equality than a chicken can lay a duck egg, right? So what's the solution to that? So the solution for black radicalism is simple, which is why the title of the talk is the Black Revolution, right? We have to believe that this isn't the only thing. And look, capitalism, imperialism are actually relatively young in terms of in historical terms. Right? The British Empire didn't really exist, only started to exist in the 17th century, became really major in the 18th century, and that system of Western imperialism was basically lasted from late 17th century onwards to now. That's a blip in human history. But we are conditioned to believing that this is the only way it can be. There are no possible other alternatives. You have to have capitalism. You can't organize in any other way, right? And this is a challenge for us because what black radicalism is saying, or other radical movements are saying, is that this system ain't gonna work for us. Not gonna work for us. The fact that I'm standing here as a professor, that don't mean nothing for you, right? Don't mean nothing for you. Everybody's, in fact, when I got my promotion recently, everybody was celebrating. I was like, what are you celebrating? What did you get? Like, really, what did you get? I know I got more money. What did you get? Really? Right? And what we've done is we've taken these kind of token figures, like, and the best example would obviously be the black president, right? Barack Obama. You take these figures and say, well, look, you can make it. I'm telling you right now, the chances of, I'm from Birmingham, Black Caribbean, born here. The chances of somebody in my position today getting to where I am, forget it. Like you have more chance of winning the lottery. And I'm not joking. That's how bad it is. Don't be deluded because a few of us have made it to thinking that, oh, you're going to make it. Because it's really not possible. I just had to tell you this and be honest to you, right? So the question we have to ask ourselves, particularly when we're in these positions, where we have been very, very fortunate and are very, very privileged, is what do we do about it? How do we get everybody? So this is what black radicalism is about. Not about the individual, it's about everybody. Like, I'm not happy because I got promoted. I can't be happy when you look at the situation of most black people in Birmingham, or most of people in the UK, or most of people in America, or most of people across the globe, right? And if you look at us as black people across the globe, you realize the situation is dire. Like, it's probably no better than it was before, right? This is another part of the really important part of what we say, what black radicalism, what is black radicalism. It is about having this understanding of us as a collective. You don't measure the top, you look at the bottom. That has to be where you look, is the bottom. How are the poorest of black people doing in this world? And the poorest of black people doing just as bad, maybe worse, if not worse than they were previously, right? 3 million children die in Southeast Africa every year because they are poor. You don't get any worse, you're dead, you're gone, right? You talk about mass incarceration in the United States, talk about the thousands of people that drown crossing the Mediterranean, right? I mean, conditions are so bad in Nigeria, in Ghana, in places in West Africa where there's no war. This is not war. They're not refugees in that sense. Economic refugees, because the conditions are so bad. And they can leave their place, go through a desert, the Sahara Desert, which is deadly enough, go through Libya, which may be the most dangerous place for black people on the planet. And then when you get through there, you got to get on a boat and risk your life to cross over into Europe. The fact that people have to feel they need to make that journey tells you just how bad life is for the black world, right? So that's the thing. It's terrible. I don't want to depress you, but I also got to be honest, right? It's not good. And one of the things that we get carried away with here is our comforts here. It will be very easy for me to stand in front of you and say, it's getting better. You can make it. Look, I made it. It's fine. We have a black studies degree. It's all good. I could say that easy, but it's not true, right? The truth is you're measured by the least, not the top, and the least are doing it worse, badly as ever. Now, sounds all bad. I'm not going to be negative anymore, promise. All positive from now on. Because to recognize that doesn't mean that we give up, right? It don't mean that you just go, okay, it's all bad, it's sad, etc. We recognize that as what do we do about it? And Black radicalism has always been this revolutionary politics that says that you actually can fix all of these problems. All of these problems can be dealt with, but we have to have a better imagination. And this is where culture is really important, because it's culture that will make you think differently, or it's culture that will make you think the same. It either put you to sleep or it can wake you up. It just depends which kind of culture you want, right? And this is why we need to get back to that kind of culture of Black radicalism and push that through the culture that we engage in, etc., etc., etc. Now, actually, it's going to be a little bit negative, but I promise it's going to be positive. And this is not negative in the sense of this, the problem. Problem is a problem. But when we're thinking about what do we do and where do we go and how do we get forward, we have to really identify what we mean by revolution, and we have to look back through. This is where the idea of study, Black studies. And not when I say Black studies, I don't necessarily mean academic university. In fact, like I said, Malcolm X, Claudia Jones. Hang on, we got an announcement. All right, sorry about that. Sorry, we had a security announcement. Nothing serious. You haven't got. It's a UK university, so you haven't got to panic like it was American one. So anyway, what was I saying? Yeah. So culture. So this is why Black studies is important, is because not in an academic sense, but not in an academic sense, but in a thinking sense. If you're not studying, you're not doing Black politics, right? All the people who've done Black politics historically have studied. It's not studied here. It's not that important that you study here. It's just important that you study, right? And when we look back and say, well, actually, what were the social movements that went previously? What were the social? What has been and what hasn't been? Where are we going and what can we learn and what can we? That's why it's important. And I'm gonna come back to the Black Panther Party and the issue of culture, because this is one of the, I guess, one of the main debates now is about what are we doing, where are we going? And there are people who are putting forward cultural arguments. Right, there's a culture of revolution. I'm telling you right now, it's not culture revolution. The revolution is, what did I say before? Crucial to revolution, but it's not revolution. I'm actually going to read a passage. I very rarely do this, but it's a relevant passage from Back to Black, retelling Black radicalism for the 21st century. Which, if you're in the UK, you can buy a copy at the end for just £15. All the money actually goes to the Harambee organization of Black Unity, where we're trying to open a education center, the Marcus Garvey Education Center. In fact, all the money, I don't make no money off the book. All my money goes to that project. So if you buy a book anywhere, the money's going to that project. Anyway, so I'm going to read a little clip from the book because it does talk to the issue of politics. It does talk to the issue of culture, and also it talks to about where are we going, right? So this is 69, the Black Panther Party, and an organization called the Oz Organization, which was started by Maulana Karenga. You may be aware or may not aware. Karenga is the person who started Kwanzaa. All right, I'm just going to read it and then let you see. It's not too long. So on 17th of January, 1969, a meeting took place at the University of California, Los Angeles, to discuss the leadership of the Afro-American Center at the college. It was a small meeting with around 15 people attending, but the tension behind the gathering far outstripped the numbers present. The Black Panther Party for Self-Defense and the Oz Organization had been fighting over control of not just the center, but the Black community in Los Angeles. At the end of the meeting, a fight broke out between the groups and two Panthers, Apprentice Bunchy Carter and John Huggins, were shot dead. The killings marked the lowest point of struggle between the two groups and destabilized both organizations in aftermath. Many factors led to the rivalry between the two Black Power groups turning so destructive. Both groups recruited heavily from the bad niggas off the block, meaning their politics of the street often collided with revolutionary ideals. The competition for recruitment to an extent aligned along gang lines in LA with the requisite territorial disputes. One of the main criticisms of the Panthers has been how they did not reform the streets, but got trapped in the negative aspects of masculinity and violence. As well as importing gang culture into politics, the white power structure also played a role in the conflict that led to the shooting. This should be no surprise, by the way. Sowing seeds of division both within and between Black Power groups was one of the major strategies of the Federal Bureau of Investigation's infamous COINTELPRO program. The FBI specifically disrupted any alliances between the Panthers and other organizations by planting agents and fabricating insulting messages in the name of each organization. As much as it would be reassuring to believe that it was the state that caused the unrest between the two groups, they only added fuel to a much larger fire of division. The Panthers and the other organization were destined to conflict, not because of gangs or the feds, but due to them embracing entirely different sets of political beliefs, one radical and the other reactionary. The other organization was based on cultural nationalism, which substitutes revolutionary change of the system for the internal mission of saving the self spiritually by connecting with Africa. The Panthers referred to other organization as pork chop nationalists, who obsess over culture at the expense of revolution. It is no coincidence that the Oz organization was founded by Maliwana Karenga, who lies at the heart of this idea of cultural nationalism. If the Panthers were the children of Malcolm, then Karenga was his illegitimate child with no rightful claim to his legacy. Karenga has had a major influence on Black politics, with it spreading across the diaspora. But the problem is politics is the regressive cultural nationalism has been conflated with the politics of Black radicalism. Now, I can go into lots and lots of detail here. I won't. But my point out that is what happens in the, I say 70s after this, right? You have these two groups, Black Panther Party, they associate revolutionary politics, organizing on a Marxist level, feeding children, combating the police. You have the Oz organization. The Oz organization was all about culture, right? It's about cultural self. How do you save yourself? How do you dress African, think African, read African, speak African, go to Africa, right? And what you found was that these are two very different things, right? One was revolutionary, one was not revolutionary. One was about the individual self, and in many ways is like a religion, right? You can save Black people, if you can save yourself if you have the right aspect of religion. Where the Panthers are saying it's not about the individual, it's not about the culture. The culture is important. This is why we have Emory Douglas. This is why we have the songs. This is why we have the music. This is why we have the newspaper. But that's not enough, right? You have to be building something internationally, et cetera, et cetera. And the Oz organization weren't doing that, right? What they were doing was doing the cultural side, working with the police, working with the feds, working with the state, right? They say, look, give us our Black thing over here that we can have culturally separate, and this can be good for us. But that's not the same thing as revolution, right? But what's happened over the last, I'd say 50 years is that we basically conflated these two things together. So what happened in the 70s was the Panthers were eradicated. When I say eradicated, I mean eradicated, as in killed, as in wiped off the face of the earth mostly. You go to American prisons, there are still Black Panthers in prison for basically doing nothing, and they have been there for decades and decades and decades. And even the Black president didn't free the Black Panthers, right? You also have Black Panthers just murdered, like literally murdered. The story of Fred Hampton is probably the worst, right? Fred Hampton, Chicago Panther, young man, is murdered by the police. They have an agent drug him in his sleep, and while he's sleeping, they kick down the door to his house and shoot him in his sleep, right? Not so dissimilar to things that are happening on the street today in America either, right? But that contrasts very well to the career of someone like Maliwana Karenga. He was a professor. He's doing all right, doing quite well, right? Has not had these problems in the state and the police. Why? Because this organization is not a dangerous organization. To trade on it, to be, I don't want to say it's controversial because it shouldn't be. The Nation of Islam is a perfect example of this, right? Which organization is responsible for pulling the trigger that killed my favorite, Malcolm X? Nation of Islam. Which person is more than likely involved in his actual assassination, who people still revere today? Louis Farrakhan. Now, if Louis Farrakhan didn't kill him, he may as well have killed him. But we're revering Farrakhan. I'm sitting there, people go, yeah, Farrakhan. That don't make sense. You can't be pro Farrakhan and pro Malcolm, right? Malcolm leaves the nation for a reason. He leaves it behind. Says, okay, it was all right, but he doesn't have the politics of revolution. The Black Panther Party, you can't be pro Black Panther Party and pro Karenga. Because the Black Panther Party, like, no, this don't make sense. And not just in a discussion, they were shooting each other. Like, it was a proper debate, right? And I think this is one of the things I always try and push back with people is it's not enough just to have this what we call weak Black nationalism. Because something's Black, we're too quick to say it's good, right? Ain't all good. There's lots of bad things, right? A lot of things are Black, which are terrible, right? And we should be okay to say that's bad. That's a bad idea. And if you look at the history of our politics, that's happened. That's always happened. We disagree with each other more than we disagree with white people, right? And that's fine. That's okay because we're not all on the same page, right? So when we're thinking about where we go forward, we have to take these missions. What's the point? What's the aim? Where's the goal? Where are we going? What's the end point of this politics? And for Black radicalism, the end point is clear. It is nothing but revolution, right? It has to have a new political and economic system. That has to happen, right? And one of the barriers to that, going back to cultural nationalism and the legacies of things like Karenga, Afrocentrism, Nation of Islam, is actually what these do. Oftentimes what you find with these cultural arguments is that they are reaffirming negative cultures from the West. Patriarchy would be a good one. Where do women fit within these organizations? Often in the heads, right? Often locked away. Where do LGBT groups fit? Hey, we ain't involved. Let's talk about that. Right? That's an abomination, all that, right? So, and what we're doing when we do that is we are, if we're saying that what is it that will bring those together? What is it that is the power of the Black nation? You go back to someone like Garveyism, who built an organization 100 years ago, 5 million people across 50 countries, biggest Black organization that ever existed. What's the basic, simple argument? Black people are a nation which must come together here, America, Africa, everywhere, must come together. And as soon as you start putting qualifications on who's this, who's in, who's that, who's at the top, who's at the bottom, you've destroyed the whole basis of your organization. The thing is that where we are, and we are come together because we come together as a nation. We don't always agree. We don't like everybody. That's fine. You can have different religions and politics, etc. But the simple fact of the matter is that we come together because we're Black. And as soon as you start putting in barriers to that, you just ruin the whole thing. It don't make any sense, and that division can't let. So that's really important when we think about culture. So the question that we are today is, all right, we're here, we're in this position. Well, what are we going to do? How are we going to move forward from it? And the biggest problem that we have is, if you want to ask the question of what happened, why did these movements fail? Why did they stop? Why have they not gone anywhere? Why are we still saying the same things now we were saying 50 years ago? It's because it's not just that the state attacked Black radicalism. Of course it did. It attacked it everywhere. Attacked it here, attacked it Africa, Caribbean, everywhere. It's also that we've got a bit, like 50 years ago, when Malcolm was talking, 100 years ago, when the Garvey people went around different parts of the diaspora and said, you know what, like, remember what Garvey said? Garvey said, let's get on a boat and leave. Let's get on a boat and leave, right? But when he said that to people, then everybody knew they weren't welcome. Like, it wasn't a discussion. It wasn't like, okay, yeah, maybe one day we're going to make it in America. They were like, okay, fair enough, it's terrible. But what is the greatest trick the devil pulled in this instance? It was giving us just enough, but now we think that we're going to make it, right? Giving it just enough. You got Black professors, you got Black teachers, you got Black police officers, you got Black people everywhere, right? Black people in the media, etc., etc. And it's making you think that it's possible to make it, right? That this is something we should be aiming towards. And that's the biggest barrier to doing the things that we need to do. The answers to these things are not complicated. Very simple. Organize, unify, politics deliberation, etc., etc. But the biggest barrier today is that you don't think you need it, right? We think it's all right. We think we're going somewhere. We're not going anywhere, right? This is why we need to come back. And I think culture is really important because this is actually one of the ways you can spread these messages. Why would the Black Panther Party so successful? Because of the newspaper, because of the cartoons, because of those popularizing those images. Why is it that Malcolm X 50 years on from Malcolm, listen to Malcolm today, he's still the best speaker. For me, he's still the best speaker you will hear. And I've heard his speeches like a million times. That's still the best, clearest version of the politics I've ever heard. Why is that? Because of the way he spoke. Malcolm speaks like art. Like it's funny, it's engaging, it's a performance, right? Because of the way those ideas are transmitted. And so when we are building this movement forward, we need to go back to that. Actually, how are we gonna? It's not just about having the ideas. That's fine. Everybody don't read books like that, right? That's not gonna happen. So how do you transmit those ideas more broadly? And I think that's definitely one of the things you can pick up from the Panthers and Emory Douglas in particular. And I'll stop there.
Okay. Should we start with, there's one question from YouTube. Let's start with that. And then we'll take a question from a guest in the UK, okay? So one of our YouTubers says, I have a question for you. Did your personal biography impact your scholarship in activism?
Yeah, of course. I mean, one, I'm Black, right? So that's what that matters. And actually, one of the things that you find with some Black scholars are like, okay, I don't want to do the Black stuff because that's what Black people do, right? There's a big thing. Anybody in academia knows that's one of the things people try and run away from, right? But I'm the 100% opposite, right? The Black stuff, that's me. Like, we started Black studies because of that. More importantly, I think, and this is why when I talk about Black studies in the university, it's not a university thing at all. It really is about community. It's about the things outside the university. What it is, what the way that my activism is today and my scholarship is today is 100% because of the way I was brought up. Right? I mean, I was brought up in a house that had all the books, Malcolm, Angela Davis books in the Claudia Jones books. Like those books were just there. We worked, volunteered at the Harriet Tubman Bookshop, which it used to be on Grove Lane in Handsworth. It's sadly closed. My family were involved in the Marcus Garvey Nursery, which is the building I'm talking about now. We're trying to save. So these ideas weren't ideas which I ever got. None of the things which I get paid to write about now did I ever pick up in university. Like it's just not there. Like you go to, you don't learn Malcolm, Black radicalism at university, man, that happened. So all of that stuff was picked up outside, and without that, I'd just been the same as everybody else, right? So I think this is why it's really important that we're building these networks, building these organizations, and also I think, yeah, this is where culture is important as well, because there were two things that really got me into this kind of thinking politics. One was the book Stokely Speaks from Black Panther Pan-Africanism, but the other was a song by Common, the rapper Common, called "A Song for Asata." I don't know if anybody's heard this. "A Song for Asata." It's like a 5-minute rap song. And he's talking about Assata Shakur. I had never heard of Assata Shakur at this point. Didn't know who she was. And he basically takes the autobiography of Assata Shakur, takes the words from the page, and makes it into a whole rap about the story, etc., etc., etc. And that 100% changed everything. So I think again, that's the kind of product that we need, because that kind of stuff reaches out to people in a way that other things wouldn't. Do we have a question from here?
Yes.
Yes. Does anybody have a question in the UK? No question? Maybe one question? Okay. That question. What was the question? Oh, yeah. Yes,
Pierre, could you just tell us?
Can you hear the question?
Yes.
Hello? Are you an integrationist or a segregationist?
All right, so the question, just to reaffirm, was, are you an integrationist or a segregationist? I'm going to quote Malcolm again, because Malcolm has usually got a quote, a good quote. It's turned up. That's right. Malcolm's usually got a quote that works. And what does Malcolm say? The word separation has been misused. A better word is independence. Right? So 100% integration, nope. Like, nope. I just said, look, integrate into what? Like, what do you want to integrate into this? Really? Like, you think this is gonna get us somewhere? I hear this argument about. So I would never say I was Black British, for example. Never. Like, it's not something that come out of my mouth. I'm Black and I'm in Britain, right? I have a passport. That's nice. I live in Birmingham, I guess. But I'd never say I'm Black British, and that is because that's just not that I recognize that my family's committed. All of my family, Black family, has done just as much, maybe more for this country than any white people have, right? Like if you actually understand what Britain is, slavery, colonialism, etc., is literally what builds and puts the bricks and mortar into the country. Same way in America, it's built on slavery, right? So in many ways, you have a claim to say I'm British or a claim to say you're American. The question is, why would you want to, right? Like you have a claim to say you own a plantation. You want to work on a plantation. Why would you want to do that, right? So I would always say integration, that's the problem, because this system is not for us. So anytime you integrate into it, you're integrating into something which is always bad for you. But separation is not the word I would use, because it's not just about saying, well, let's separate and do something at the side, or separate and do something. Oftentimes when you hear those arguments, the Nation of Islam was separatist. Like they wanted a space in the south of America that was just for Black people. But they didn't really want to do anything sensible with it, right? The key thing here is about independence. How do we build independent politics where the Black people can draw power from? That's always what Garveyism was about, revolutionary Pan-Africanism was about, because Africa is the richest continent on the planet by a distance. Africa has mineral wealth, resource wealth, etc., etc. And the question is, how do we organize ourselves so that we can use that wealth and become independent? It's not about separateness; it's about independence.
Can we be independent in Britain, or do we have to be independent in the context like back to African governments?
So the question was, can we be independent in Britain, or do we need to go back to Africa? Answer is no, we can't be independent in Britain. Not properly, not fully. As what we're Britain, we're 3% of the population. Even in America, it's like 12% of the population. I mean, that's not that can't be proper independence. We can do some stuff, like we're saying, let's have a black school, let's do black study, let's do black organizations. But fundamentally, this is not one of the problems you make. Is we don't look at this as this is a global problem. So it has to have a global solution. And the only solution for us globally is Africa, fundamentally at some point. Not right now, but eventually, yeah. Did you have a question in the States?
I'll take this opportunity to ask a question. In the book, at the end, you're advocating for a new type of Black radicalism, which you define essentially as a kind of a mindset, a liberating way of thinking. And I think at one point you describe it as thinking Black. And you also say that thinking Black doesn't have anything to do with one's complexion. Mm-hmm. And then later in the book, you talk about this, as a Black radicalism, as a new movement, a new version, which would be mediated through the Black body. And I guess my question is, obviously, we would have to be very careful of colonialistic mindsets that you did a very good job in the book critiquing. But is there a place for people that don't have Black bodies to think Black or to somehow contribute to Black liberation?
Yeah, right. So, I mean, one of the things with Black radicalism very much is, this is where the independence question, I guess, comes back again, and separatism is, look, Black, like when I say Black politics and Black radicalism and Black organization, that does mean Black. When I say Black, I mean Black. And that is in relation to, I mean, pigment is part of that, but it's not about, so it's very, Blackness and race are two very different things, right? Race is a European construct, which is put on by Europeans come and say, we're different races. You're different, biologically different. You're inferior. You're a different species, right? And because of that, we're going to treat you differently, and we treat you inferior. That's not Blackness, right? This is one of the things we need to stop straight away. That's not Blackness. Blackness is us saying, yeah, we are different. There's clearly, like, you think when Europeans went to Africa, they didn't go, you look different. Of course, they look different, right? And it's about saying, look, this difference is important because it connects us to Africa and it connects us to each other. There's a biology to it, obviously, because it's passed down, hereditary, etc. But it isn't the same as European race, right? It's about saying we're connected like family. That's important. There's not like we don't have traits where we're all the same and one's superior and one's inferior. It's about saying we're connected into a family and into a nation, and we have responsibility for each other. So we call it political essentialism, not a cultural essentialism and not a biological essentialism. Now, so the book, but this book does particularly say, well, look, what do we do as Black people? Unashamedly says, what do? We build a Black nation of diaspora and connection that can be independent and do these things. It does raise the question of, well, if you're not Black, what does Black radicalism do for you? Now, I don't know, is the answer. I mean, and I say that seriously. I say that genuinely seriously, is that I don't think that's within the scope of my work, I can't answer that question. What I can say is this critique's important. It's a critique that's important not just for Black people, particularly if you're not white and if you live in the 300 million people in China who live in desperate poverty. They have the same problem as we got. It's called racism, right? And that needs to be fixed, and imperialism. And if you're white and poor in the West, it's not great for you either, right? And one of the things that Black radicalism does, if we had this Black independence state, if you like, let's go 50, 100 years in the future, African Revolution. Well, that actually ends capitalism. Capitalism cannot function if Africa is liberated. So that doesn't just end capitalism for us, that ends capitalism for everybody, right? So if you don't benefit from capitalism, this is also a fight that you are in. And I think in doing that, and what you find with Black radical organizations have always been organizations which have tried to make links. Black Panther Party made links with Chicano movements, gay liberation movements, always made links. But there's a difference between making links and being in the same organization, because you have to have Black independence. One of the things, and I'm writing a book about this in a minute, on the West is built on racism and how this system emerges. It's all based on racism, colonialism, genocide, slavery. But what I didn't realize until actually this week really was just how much anti-Blackness is a different level of that, and actually groups across the world have benefited from anti-Blackness within this system. And what you're seeing today is that groups are still benefiting. China benefits from anti-blackness constantly, right? So you still need to have independence because anti-blackness is a thing. And it's very, very possible that you can have a future that isn't just about white racism, it's anti-black racism, which keeps us in the position that we've always been, but other people benefit off that. So you have to have independence. That's really, really, really important. That doesn't mean they're totally separate things. If we're having a movement against the World Bank, for example, which is now, we just call the devil. The World Bank is the devil, right? Well, that's the devil to everybody, devil to India, devil to China. So on that, you have unity. And we should always have unity on these issues, but there has to be independent space. Question? No? Yes? I'm going to pass you the microphone, please.
You mentioned culture and its importance. How would you class the culture of Black people today, or the Black community today, in comparison to the culture of the Black community in the times of the Panthers and so on and so forth? Is there a difference? And if so, what is that difference?
All right, so the question was, what's the difference between the culture today for Black people and the culture in the time of the Panthers, et cetera, et cetera? And the difference is the politics. I mean, the difference really is the politics, right? Revolutionary culture can only be produced from revolutionary politics. And when you have the Black Power movement and you have the Panthers, that produces that kind of revolutionary culture. It's the same with reggae, right? So you think about reggae, liberation movement, what produces reggae is Rastafari, right? It's the movement. It's Garveyism, it's the movement, right? And when you have that politics, that leads to people expressing their culture in that way. And that's the difference. When you ain't got that revolutionary politics, you are not going to get a revolutionary culture. You are going to get Beyonce at the Super Bowl, right? So if you want to be talking about having a revolutionary culture, you have to have the revolutionary politics. That's why I always push that. That's because that's what will produce a culture. Was there a question in the States?
Yeah, we have a question here. How can I guess this is people of color, be good allies to the movement without speaking for or over Black voices?
Yeah, I think that's why that independence question comes about really importantly, and in the UK in particular, so in the UK, we have this idea of political blackness, where if you're not white, you're black, right? And everybody's part of blackness. It's a big, is it a debate anymore? I don't know, but it's controversial anyway. And I say that's an example of just a bad way of having unity, right? A better way of having unity. And actually, if you look at what's actually happened historically in the UK, isn't that everybody was politically black in the 70s and now we've broken up? That's just really, really, really not true, right? What actually happened in the past was, and happens now actually, is you had West Indian organizations, Asian organizations, Black organizations, Muslim organizations will come together on different issues. So actually, we have an issue with schools, let's come together on this. We've got an issue with the Immigration Act, let's come together on this. And that is how you move forward, right? And if you look at the Panthers and the Chicano movements, that's what it was. It's like, look, we are an organization who does things that we need to do, but there are things which we need to do collectively, and we will do those things collectively. And on the bigger scale as well, that was always the case in Africa. The Pan-African movement that wanted to unify Africa was very much about Africa as a space, independence on that level. But who is it that gets involved in the Third World movement, in the Bandung movement? It's the Pan-African country, because they're saying, yeah, we've got our struggle, but there are issues which we come together with on that, and that's the level. So if you have that, there's no debate about speaking over, speaking for. It's about speaking with and together.
Let's take one more question from Birmingham.
One more question? Anybody got a question? No question? Oh, we got a question. That's a question, right? Yeah. One more question.
Thank you. Basically, as Black people, I think we're people of collectivity, and the more we became evicted from our roots, the more they try to separate us from collectivity. Now we've been uprooted from that particular root. Now the thing is, how can intellectuals build collectivity that can influence music, pop culture, because those pop artists have more influence on Black people than intellectuals. So how can, like, Galvaism transformed into Rastafari movement and Bob Marley came into being? How can intellectuals of this present generation influence pop, art, and all that, so it can affect people more than we coming here and having lectures and go home about it?
So the answer to the question about how can intellectuals influence that culture, it's not an intellectual thing, right? It's not. Intellectuals can't do that job, and intellectuals have never done that job, right? What it was that influenced was organized politics, was politics, right? So think about Sammy Davis Jr. I don't know why it popped into my head when he's talking. Sammy Davis Jr., really popular, one of the most popular Black guys probably of all time, right? You know who Sammy Davis Jr. is? Am I talking to myself? So he's a bit in the 60s, really important, like Rat Pack was part of the Frank Sinatra, all that crew, massively pop artist. This guy actually did support the civil rights movement, also ended up supporting, was it Nixon? Was it Nixon? It's one of them. There's a really good podcast about this by Malcolm Gladwell on revisionist history, where Sammy Davis Jr., I think it was Nixon. They say Nixon, I could be wrong. Hugs Nixon, supporting Nixon. Nixon's like one of the most racist presidents of all time. Now, the reason I'm telling this story is Black people at the time didn't go, oh yeah, we should support Nixon. They went, who's that sellout Uncle Tom, Sammy Davis Jr.? Why was that? Because of intellectuals? There were no Black intellectuals at that time, in an academic sense. There were no Black people in universities at that time. That was people in the community, in the organizations, who were shaping how we understand things. And they got their legitimacy from organizations, from the people, from the masses. Even, I'm not a big fan of civil rights and a big fan of Martin Luther King, but that legitimacy comes from the people, right? And this is one of the major problems that we have today, actually, is we've forgotten about that. And you're coming into a university, talking to a professor who got his legitimacy from where? White people, right? The white institution, and asking me to lead. That's a problem, right? We need to build the organization. Because once you do that, that's how you change the culture. Because if you have this, like when you have the Garvey movement in America, which is literally a million people in America, you can't have the same pop culture. You can't do it because the people are going to say, what's this? I don't want to know, right? And if we don't build those organizations, then we're not going to be able to change that. So that's the issue. And that's actually what we're trying to do. So we started the Rambi organization of Black Unity. And the point is to say, well, let's go back to that mission. Black Revolution looks like that. It looks like starting an organization here, the links across the diaspora, et cetera, et cetera. And I welcome everybody to look at www.blackunity.org.uk. If you're in Birmingham, we're just about to open the Marcus Garvey Education Center, hopefully in the next month or so. And we're serious about doing that because that is the solution. It is the only solution. It's always been the solution. And that's what we're trying to build towards. And if you buy a book, the money goes to doing that as well. So, and I think I'll leave it at that.
Okay, one quick announcement. I've posted the sign-in sheet in the comment section. So if you're attending for extra credit for yourself or someone else, make sure that you fill out that form. Dr. Andrews, thank you very much for your time. We really appreciated hearing what you had to say. The book is called Back to Black, Retelling Black Radicalism for the 21st Century. So all my students, I want you to buy the book.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thanks a lot.